Do you study English, understand lessons, and still freeze when it's time to speak?
Then this lesson is for you.
Today we're talking about a very important and very honest topic. Why you still can't speak English.
This is something so many learners feel. They study for months or even years, they know grammar, they know vocabulary, they understand lessons, but when it's time to speak, everything feels blocked.
And that can feel frustrating, confusing, and sometimes even embarrassing.
So today, we're going to talk about the real reasons this happens and what learners can start doing differently.
First, listen to our dialogue. Then we'll come back and explain the key ideas step by step. Let's get started. Thanks for coming in today. I think today's topic is going to feel very real for a lot of learners.
Yes, definitely. I think this is one of those topics people don't always enjoy hearing, but they really need it. Because a lot of learners secretly ask themselves the same question: why can't I speak English yet?
And often they ask that question in a very harsh way, like they've failed somehow.
Yes, and that's usually the first thing that needs to change. The problem is often not that they are stupid, bad at languages, or hopeless. Usually there are specific reasons, and those reasons can be understood.
That's such an important place to start. So let's talk honestly. Why do you think many learners still can't speak English even after studying for a long time?
I think one of the biggest reasons is that they've studied English mostly as information, not as communication. They've learned about the language, but they haven't built enough experience actually using it in a real active way.
So they know English as a subject, but not yet as a living skill.
Yes, that's it. They may know grammar rules, understand exercises, and recognize vocabulary, but speaking is different. Speaking is fast, active, emotional, and physical. It needs automatic patterns, not only knowledge.
That makes complete sense. So one problem is that learners confuse knowing English with being able to use English.
Yes, and those are not the same thing. You can understand a lot and still struggle to produce language under pressure.
I think another reason is fear. A lot of learners are afraid of making mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. Fear is huge. Many learners don't actually practice speaking enough because every speaking moment feels like a test. They want to sound correct, intelligent, and smooth immediately, and that pressure makes speaking even harder.
So the desire to sound good can actually stop people from speaking at all.
Exactly. If every sentence has to be perfect, the mouth becomes afraid to move. But speaking develops through imperfect repetition, not through waiting for perfection.
That is such a powerful sentence. What else blocks speaking?
I think another big reason is that learners often try to say too much too early. Instead of using simple English well, they try to build very advanced thoughts before their speaking system is ready.
So the problem is not always lack of English, sometimes it's the size of the sentence they're trying to build.
Yes, exactly. They want to say something very deep, complex, and precise, but they haven't yet built enough fast, usable English to do that comfortably, so the sentence collapses before it comes out.
That's such a good way to describe it. So maybe one answer is that learners need more simple, speakable English, not just more difficult English.
Yes, I think many learners underestimate the power of simple English, but simple English is what creates flow. If you can say small, real things naturally, you can build from there.
What about translation? That seems like another huge problem.
Yes, definitely. A lot of learners still try to build every sentence through their first language first. That slows everything down. By the time they've translated the idea, checked the grammar, and doubted the word choice, the natural moment to speak is already gone.
Yes, and then they feel like they can't speak, when really they're trying to take a very slow path into speech.
Exactly. So part of learning to speak is reducing the distance between thought and English, not making that distance disappear completely overnight, but making it smaller.
What about listening? Do you think learners sometimes understand too little real spoken English to speak naturally themselves?
Yes, I think that's a massive issue. Many learners hear a lot of classroom English, but not enough real spoken English. So they know correct English, but they don't have enough natural chunks, reactions, and rhythm in their ears yet.
So if real spoken English doesn't sound familiar yet, producing it naturally is much harder.
Right. Speaking depends a lot on familiarity. If your brain has heard something many times in real context, it becomes easier to use. But if the language only exists in lists, rules, and written exercises, it stays passive.
That makes a lot of sense. What about consistency? I feel like many learners study in a very irregular way.
Yes, definitely. That's another huge reason. They do a lot for 2 days, then nothing for a week, then feel guilty, then start again, then stop again. That kind of emotional pattern makes progress much slower.
That's so real. And I think guilt makes everything heavier too.
Yes, absolutely. Learners often think the problem is lack of talent, but sometimes the real problem is lack of consistent contact with the language. Speaking grows through repetition. If the contact keeps breaking, the speaking system stays weak.
So consistency matters more than intensity sometimes.
Yes, 20 minutes a day of active, focused English can do more than one very motivated weekend followed by silence.
That's such a useful sentence. What about passive learning? Do you think some learners consume too much and produce too little?
Yes, all the time. They watch, listen, read, save videos, buy courses, write down words, but they still do not speak enough out loud, and that's a huge difference. Input matters, of course, but speaking requires output too.
That's such a big one. Learners often feel productive because they're constantly doing English, but they may still be avoiding the one thing that actually scares them.
Yes, often the scariest part is the most necessary part.
And that one thing is usually speaking out loud, even alone, even simple sentences, even daily life English.
Exactly.
So, what should a learner do if they feel like they understand a lot but still freeze when speaking?
I think first they should stop expecting speaking to feel easy before they practice it. Speaking becomes easier because you practice it, not before.
A lot of people are waiting to feel ready.
Yes, and that wait can last forever. Learners often think, once I know a little more grammar, once I learn more vocabulary, once I feel more confident, then I'll speak. But confidence often comes after speaking practice, not before.
That's such an important truth. So, what does useful speaking practice actually look like?
I think it looks very simple at first. Answering basic questions out loud, describing your day, talking about your routine, reacting to real topics, repeating useful phrases, building automatic chunks, not performing, just training.
That's such a helpful distinction, not performing, training.
Yes, I think many learners imagine every speaking moment has to be impressive, but really they need repetitions more than performances.
Do you think some learners also use the wrong success measure? For example, they think, if I make mistakes, I still can't speak.
Yes, definitely. That mindset is very damaging. If you can express your idea, respond, ask, react, continue, and survive a real conversation, you are speaking. Not perfectly, maybe, but genuinely. Mistakes are part of speaking, not proof that you can't do it.
So the question should maybe change from why can't I speak to how can I speak more easily and more often?
Yes, that question is much more useful and much kinder.
What about mental overload? Sometimes learners know too many rules in their heads while trying to speak.
Yes, absolutely. That's another big issue. If the learner is trying to remember grammar rules, vocabulary accuracy, pronunciation, word order, and what sounds smart all at the same time, the brain gets overloaded.
So too much conscious control can block natural speaking.
Exactly. At some point, speaking has to move from conscious control into pattern memory. That takes repetition, not more overthinking.
What are some signs that a learner is overthinking too much while speaking?
Long pauses, restarting sentences all the time, apologizing too much, translating mentally, wanting the best word instead of using an easy one, feeling exhausted after saying just a few sentences.
That's such a clear description. So what should they do in the moment if they feel that happening?
Simplify immediately. Make the sentence smaller. Choose the easy word. Keep moving. Don't stop the whole conversation just because one sentence isn't perfect.
So real speaking grows through momentum.
Yes, if learners keep stopping themselves, the speaking muscle never gets strong.
So if someone asked you, why do I still understand English but not speak it? What would you say?
I'd say probably because your English is still more passive than active. You know more than you can use. And that's normal. The answer is not shame. The answer is more active practice, more direct speaking, more repetition, more chunks, and less perfectionism.
That's such a strong answer. And what would you say to someone who feels discouraged?
I'd say don't measure yourself only by the hardest moments. If speaking feels hard now, that doesn't mean you can't become a speaker. It usually means the skill still needs training, that's all.
That's such an encouraging and realistic message. So, really, the problem is often not talent, it's training, habits, fear, and the way people practice.
Yes, and the good news is that those things can change.
That's such an important place to end this conversation. Because, yes, many learners still can't speak English easily, but that does not mean they are stuck forever.
Exactly. It just means they need a better path from knowledge into use.
Okay, now let's look at the key ideas from today's dialogue and see why many learners still can't speak English easily and what they need instead.
Yes, because this topic is not about blaming learners, it's about understanding the real reasons.
This is one of the biggest ideas in today's lesson. You can know English and still not be able to use it quickly in real conversation.
Knowledge is important, but speaking is a skill, and skills need active training.
Very useful phrase. I know more English than I can actively use right now. Many learners don't speak enough because they want every sentence to sound good immediately. A very useful idea from today's lesson is, if every sentence has to be perfect, the mouth becomes afraid to move.
Speaking grows through imperfect repetition.
Very often, learners are not blocked because they know nothing. They are blocked because they are trying to say something too advanced for their current speaking level. Useful phrases. The sentence feels too heavy. I need a simpler way to say this. Simple English creates flow.
That's a very important one.
Another big reason is I still translate too much in my head. A useful idea is speaking becomes easier when the distance between thought and English gets smaller.
That's one of the biggest goals in speaking practice.
Many learners watch, listen, read, save content, study rules, but they still do not speak enough out loud. Useful phrases, my English is still more passive than active. I need more output, not only input. I have to start using the language more directly.
Output matters too.
A very useful idea is consistency matters more than motivation sometimes. Other useful phrases, I study in an irregular way. I do a lot for 2 days, then stop. I need more regular contact with English. Small daily practice is better than rare big effort.
That's such an important one.
Useful things to practice: describe your day, answer simple questions, react naturally, repeat useful chunks, speak out loud even when alone, build automatic phrases. Useful phrases: I need more real speaking practice. I'm training, not performing. I need repetitions more than perfection.
That mindset changes everything.
Here are some very useful phrases from today's lesson. Why can't I speak English yet? I know English as a subject, but not yet as a living skill. My English is still more passive than active. I'm afraid of making mistakes. The sentence feels too heavy. I need a simpler way to say it. I still translate too much in my head. I need more active practice. I'm training, not performing. The goal is not perfection. The goal is movement. Confidence comes after practice, not before. I need a better path from knowledge into use.
These are useful not only for English, but for understanding the whole learning process.
Here's an example of a natural answer. I think I still struggle to speak English because I often translate in my head and try to say too much at once. I know a lot of English passively, but I don't always use it actively enough. I also think I'm too afraid of mistakes sometimes. What I need is more simple speaking practice, more repetition, and less pressure to sound perfect. For me, the goal now is to use English more directly and more often.
That sounds clear, honest, and very useful.
So, as you can see, if you still can't speak English easily, it doesn't always mean you're bad at English.
Very often, it means your knowledge is still more passive than active, your practice is too irregular, or you're putting too much pressure on yourself.
And that means the problem can change.
Because the path forward is clear. Simpler English, more active use, more repetition, more speaking, and less perfectionism.
And that's what makes speaking feel more possible, more natural, and more real.
And if you enjoy lessons like this, don't forget to subscribe.
It really helps the channel grow and reach more people.
And it helps more learners practice real, natural English.
So subscribe, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
Bye.